Episode 4. I have started talking about my life just because I want to, record some of these early stories or things that happened to me or things that I have done throughout my life, and later on whether I will write them in a book or make videos about them, that's a whole different story. Nevertheless, I think it's interesting, to see what shaped people. How interesting it would be, if everybody had a YouTube channel like me, because I am basically like a person who is now a public persona. I am no longer myself. At this point, I'm wearing a mask of Eldin Husik. So if you want to find out who Eldin Husik is, you can go to my YouTube channel, Newfound Bosnian, and see things about my life, see things about my history, my present, my future, my philosophy, my music, my family. In the end, even though, most of the time people tell you that some things should be private, even our, Prime Minister of Canada, or our King of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, said that government has no place in the bedroom. It seems to me that quite the opposite is true, because the more privacy we have, the more we try to hide from each other, is the more we actually lie to ourselves and to others. If you have something to hide, then there's a problem. Your secrets are sooner or later going to become bigger than you are. So do you want to be your secrets, or do you want to be yourself? That's the question, I am just like you, I have plenty of secrets that nobody wants to know about. I have done things that I'm not proud of. I'm doing things that I'm not proud of. This YouTube channel is exactly that. Who wants to go and tell your innermost, secrets and ideas in this public forum? I do. Because truly, I don't have anything to hide. I am you and you are me. Whatever I'm talking about, you think about. You just don't want to talk about it publicly. So you do it behind the closed doors. And that's even worse. That's even worse. This is where abuse happens. This is where cheating happens. To this day, I suffer because of betrayal trauma. And this is something that I bring on from my childhood. My parents lived in this relationship that was really tarnished by it. My grandparents lived in a relationship like that. And then we had a bloody war. So through these stories, I'm really hoping to shed lights about these different issues. I talk about such things that most people don't want to talk about, such as issues of, abuse in your childhood. And I talk about it openly because it's there anyways. How you're going to judge me speaks more about you than it speaks about me. Unfortunately, you can only see me through the prism of your own experiences, not through my own eyes. But by me sharing all these stories, I am trying to tell you that there's a different way to live. Openly, honestly, lovingly, kindly, if that's the word. So in the episode 4, before I continue, because I left off, at the age of 7, and us leaving our first apartment and getting a new apartment provided by our beautiful government for free. It was such a beautiful experience, moving from one room to a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 balconies. With radiators, heated radiators. You have no idea. You have no idea what happiness is. 4 of us walked through this town, and when we saw our apartment, we realized that happiness is real, that Disneyland is my home. So the people that made all this possible. Today I want to talk about my father, Agan. Agan was the man who made all this possible, who made me possible. Of course, we all believe that some of us have this soul contract and we come to this existence because of something that we have to do with our lives. And in many ways, we choose our parents. but that's something that's a little bit more esoteric, and I want to talk about realistic things so people can follow me much easier. So this man was born in a smaller town in northwestern Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this town was at the edge of the Ottoman Empire conquest. So Ottoman Empire was in Bosnia and Herzegovina for 600 years, and to the furthest extension into Europe was basically at where my father's home city was. So the people from that area are tough as nails, because they basically fought bitterly, constantly, for bloody centuries, just like people in Afghanistan. The Ottomans, the Turks, the Muslim invasion of Europe came to that point. And at one point they pushed it further all the way to Vienna, Austria, but truly that was kind of the border. So my God, the history of that region is just amazing. It was interesting to find out where family Husic, which is our last name, or as pronounced is Bosnian Husic, comes from. And what I found out is that our last name is equally given to, or there are people who are Muslims, there are people who are Roman Catholics, Orthodox Christians with the same surname, even some Romanis. The oldest record that I found was at a small coastal city in Croatia. So there are some families, and because of the problems they had with Italians or I don't know, Germans, they went from that area to Bosnia and Herzegovina. So they were probably original Slavs or some other inhabitants of that area, because they were native people of the Balkans. But if you look at ancestry, I am like, for example, in my case, I'm 12% German, I'm 17% Slav, I'm 12% Turkish, I'm 7% Celt, Irish, 4% Mongolian. So none of us in the Balkans are truly, let's say, we're Serbs or Bosnians or Croats. No, man. We are as mixed as they come. Sometimes I ask myself whether I'm a human at all. I do think that I'm Caucasian, which means, I guess, white. And all Caucasians come from Caucasus Mountains in Russia, so we are all Russians. Unfortunately, even Ukrainians. So it goes to show how we are so much more connected than we are disconnected, and that every other thing, basically every other division, stems from us wanting to manipulate and control each other through other ways, such as economy or something else. So basically I want something that's not mine, so in order for me to get it, I'm going to screw you over financially or spiritually, or through a war, and take it, whether that's your spouse, that's your house, that's your country. We're cursed, definitely cursed because of that, and that's why we have so many problems in present time, and that's because we have always been like that. This is why today there's such a huge inequality of people who have billions and billions of dollars, and people who are basically struggling to make ends meet. Those divisions have been made a long time ago. The first time a person tried to pull one over somebody else, that's where the inequality happens. And if we are humans, then sharing should be more so in our way of interacting with each other than taking. But we actually only know how to take, not to give, or how to receive. The only thing that we are good at is taking. So Husic family comes from that beautiful Mediterranean area of Croatia, and then they moved to mountains region of Bosnia, and they stayed there for centuries. And at some point, little boy Agan was born to my grandfather Salih. It was a Muslim family, and at some point my grandmother passed away. She got sick when my father was born, and they used some sort of leeches to try to bring her back to life because there were no doctors at that time, and of course she passed away. So my grandfather was very disillusioned, and he left Bosnia, moved down to Herzegovina, to this small town Konjic where I was born when my father was 2, and lived there for about 6 years on his own. He ended up meeting this amazing Croatian lady, and they got remarried, and because of her he actually denounced Islam and became Christian, took a different name. So even though he was born Muslim, Salih, he became Mladen, a Christian, and never told us about it, by the way, because when we went to his funeral, we were expecting a Muslim funeral, and then when we saw a crucifix with a name that we've never heard of, we were all surprised. One of the greatest practical jokes he's played on us. This man was such a character. His job was a dam builder, so he used to build dams around the country, and one of the reasons why he came to my hometown Konjic was building a dam. Unfortunately, he fell off a dam, some 30 meters, and lost his eye. So he used to have a joke that he was the only man who could see his own ass, with his own eyes. So he would pull his glass eye from his head and put it back to look at his ass, and then put it back in. It was the greatest trick ever. As a child, I loved him, doing that, just taking his glass eye. But that glass eye looked so real, man. I always thought it wasn't, it wasn't fake, but it was fake. Nevertheless, he survived and became like the greatest comedian ever, and an alcoholic. His greatest picture that he had in his, Chesterfield, like in the kitchen, was a picture of my father holding me while I am riding a donkey, and while visiting Croatia and staying at the beach, like going swimming and stuff like that. These Croatians would carry a donkey around and let you take a picture on a donkey. So I was, sitting on a donkey. My father was holding me, and somebody took a picture of us. So we gave that picture to him, and he always loved it. It's like, yeah, I love this picture. This is my favorite picture, the 3 donkeys. He was such a comedian, but he was an alcoholic. He wasn't really happy with his life, obviously, with everything that happened. So when he was 8 years old, he decided to go pick up my father from Bosnia and bring him to Herzegovina. However, he never told his wife that he did have a son from a previous marriage, or that he was married at all. So when he came to pick up my father, my father was shocked, and he told him, just pack up and we're leaving. Like, there was nothing else. My father didn't even have shoes, so my aunt, his stepsister, lent him her boots. So he had these girls' boots, and they had to walk for about 8 hours to the bus station so they can take a bus and go home. While at the bus station, my grandfather got so drunk. The police had to kind of bring my father to him and put them on a bus so they can go back home, because he was just scared about, telling his wife about this whole thing. Anyways, that kind of became like their relationship, because for years later at night, my grandmother would say, go look for your father, and my father would kind of, because they lived next to this railroad tracks. Their home was next to railroad tracks, so he would get to the railroad tracks, and then he would have to either go 4 kilometers down this way or 4 kilometers down that way, because there were 2 different bars that he would go to, and he would just go there, either stay there until passes out, or try to walk home and then pass out somewhere on the rail tracks. And a lot of times he would be sleeping on the rail tracks, so if he wouldn't move him, the train could have killed him. So you had to go look for him, but again, it could be 4 kilometers this way or 4 kilometers that way. Reminds me of that Chinese wall and those towers on the Chinese wall. So when Mongolians would attack the Chinese wall, this family that was taking care of that one tower would be like, okay, son, go run for help. So the son can run either this way or that way, So maybe he can go this way and the family is not there, or maybe he can go that way, and that decision when that child has to decide should we go this way or that way, because that decision will, you know, decide whether his family will live or not. I can't even imagine, but you know, I'm glad he turned out somewhat okay. Obviously not, you know, after slapping that kindergarten teacher, you know, there was definitely some anger issues that he transferred on to me for sure. One thing that, you know, I remember about my father is that he could never lie. There was a story he told me about, you know, his father trying to find out whether something happened or didn't happen. And he was so angry at him that he told him, listen, I want to like hook you up to this like power line and fry you alive if you don't tell me the truth. And he kept saying, listen, I don't lie, you can kill me if you want, but I don't lie. And my grandfather said to my grandma, look, this man does not lie. And my father grew up in such a way that he just could not tell a lie, man. And he's had a great life, great honest life, and he's lived really well. But a lot of people who ended up lying, cheating, stealing, especially during the wartime, they made such a good life for themselves, yet he had a decent life. He could have done so much more, but to him, having that peace of mind meant so much more than any riches of this world. I saw him cry only 2 times in his lifetime. Unlike me, I cry daily. To me, you know, whether I go to pee or go to cry, it's like, you know, I drop a coin. Okay, I'll pee. Or I'll go cry. He only cried twice. Once in 1980, when I was 5 years old, when our president Tito died, the whole country cried. I mean, you can actually Google, you know, President Tito. And his funeral was one of the most amazing funerals this humanity has ever seen. More dignitaries and representatives of countries visited his funeral than any other politician in the world. After all, Yugoslavia controlled pretty much 2/3 of the world market. But that's a topic for another, you know, another podcast. Why was Yugoslavia destroyed? Exactly for that, for the economical reasons. And the second time he cried was because his Dida, or his grandfather, died, and that was the man who took care of him from ages 2 to 8. And that was the first time 2 of us traveled together to Bosnia to, you know, go to this funeral. And I remember us showing up there, and it was just like the moment we showed up in front of the house, he simply let it go. It was you know, a sight to behold for sure, you know, because it's not it wasn't at that time, you know, that you could see a man, you know, cry. Luckily those things have changed a little bit, and now we are more in touch with ourselves. So yeah, in this video I kind of wanted to introduce a little bit, you know, my own father, because, you know, he was definitely a person who shaped my life. And the other person that shaped my life was my mother, and I will talk about her in the next video. How sad it is that in this day and age, you know, most parents do not live together. Our families have fallen apart, and we as society have not been able to, you know, help our young couples stay together, provide for their families. We did not educate them with love in a way that they could actually like be happy. We failed miserably. You know, at this point, for example, here in Newfoundland, we have 81.7% of, you know, single mothers. That means that, like, what, 80% of fathers cannot stay with their children. This is a systematic error. This is not an error, but this is, you know, what the system wants us to live, the way we should be living, which is sad, because, again, early childhood education is very important, and the role of the father and the mother in the upbringing of children is very, very important. I hope you're following me in, you know, in these stories about my life. But, you know, there you go, a little bit about, you know, my old man. Next time we're continuing with my mother and then moving to a new apartment. Yay! Love you all. I hope everybody's having a great day. It's a beautiful rainy afternoon here. I'm scheduled for my surgery on Monday. Yeah, another little thing about my old man is that he had the same surgery that I'm about to have, and I got diagnosed with it on his birthday. And after my doctor told me, well, it's your father's birthday and this is a hereditary disease, so it's kind of like a family tradition. And I told him, you know what, I have a feeling I'm going to have a surgery on my mother's birthday, which is September 11th. Sure enough, I get scheduled for my mother's birthday. Coincidence or not remains to be seen. Life is just like that, full of beautiful coincidences, and that's us. Cheers. Love you all. Bye.